Ladies and gentlemen, namaskar. Welcome to the 15th edition of the Jaipur Literature Festival, protected by Dettol, Banega Swasth India at Han Machalski Foundation, Beta. We are delighted to introduce copyright protection of literary works for the creative sector in the digital world. This session is presented by the United States Patent and Trademark Office. Intellectual property rights are vital to the literary world. They support creators, help transform their livelihoods, and encourage innovation. Creative economies are empowered by the protection and development of IP rights and strategies, but with added complexities to publishing, such as digitization and the general but grave risk of infringement and piracy, how can the culture and notions of intellectual property evolve? Featuring a panel of experts, a session on developments in copyright, infringement activities, and the power of IP protection in the now digital literary phase. I welcome G.R. Raghavender. G.R. Raghavender is a civil servant from the Central Secretariat Service, 1988. At present, he is the Joint Secretary, Department of Justice, Ministry of Law and Justice since January 2017. I now welcome Urvashi Butalia. She is an independent publisher and writer, co-founder of India's first feminist publishing house, Kali for Women. She now runs Zubaan, an imprint of Kali. Our next panelist, Blaise Fernandes, is the president and CEO of the Indian music industry, the apex body that represents the recorded music industry in India, and has over 34 years of experience in the entertainment industry. Safir Anand. Safir Anand is the author of Chrysalis and the creative genius behind many leading brands in India, proffering inputs on brand strategy, business models, marketing, and commercial insights, blended with an astute mastery of IP law. Ananth Padmanabhan. He is the CEO of HarperCollins India, responsible for the HarperCollins and Collins learning divisions in India, reporting to Charlie Redmayne, CEO of HarperCollins in the UK. He joined HarperCollins in 2015. Over a career spanning 2 decades, Ananth has extensive experience in developing sales, distribution, and marketing strategy in publishing. I now welcome John Cabeca, United States Intellectual Property Counselor for South Asia. He has served Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, Maldives, Nepal, Pakistan, Sri Lanka. Mr. Cabeca is the principal officer within the US embassies and consulates throughout South Asia on matters related to the protection and enforcement of IP rights. In 2019, Mr. Cabeca was recognized by the head of the US Office of Personal Management for his leadership role as chair of the San Francisco Federal Executive Board and for his service to the nearly 50,000 federal employees working in over 450 agencies and offices across Northern California. I request John Cabeca to kindly take over.
Is that good? Thank you. Thank you and good morning. It's my pleasure on behalf of the U.S. Embassy here in India and on behalf of the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office to introduce today's session. And also just a special thanks to Teamwork and the Jaipur Literature Festival team for working with us to bring such an esteemed panel of experts together. So we've made it to the last day of the festival, and I was talking to our panelists earlier this morning, and there's some mixed reviews. They want the festival to keep going because there's been so much great content over the past few days. We've heard speakers from all over the world, government officials, industry experts, authors, producers, discuss a wide range of issues that are relevant to today's literary communities. And it also has sparked some lively discussion, and I think we'll hear some of that this morning as well. But in the previous sessions that I attended, I heard speakers speak about a variety of different themes, all of which I think touch on today's theme as well. I've heard a need for artistic expression, a need for artistic freedom. I heard speakers speak about the need to fight for your rights, and I think more importantly, the growing threat of cyber crimes and online piracy as we seek the digital environment has become more and more prevalent in creative works. And so recognizing the different forms of literary and artistic expression and the increasing role that data and content play in reaching the public and reaching consumers it was an overarching theme for me throughout this festival. And so they resonated with me as IP Counsel for Intellectual Property. I see intellectual property as the foundation where a lot of these issues rely on intellectual property, which provides a framework to protect the creations of artistic and literary works. So IP rights help creators and innovators transform their ideas into reality. Intellectual property serves as the foundation to support income generation, to support job creation, and to foster economic growth. So my role here in India, as we work with the government, as we work with industries and advocate on behalf of rights holders and raise IP awareness, as we work together to raise the dialogue on intellectual property, and we look to IP rights, and in particular today's session on copyrights, and how vital these rights are to the literary and artistic industries. So central in facilitating relationships as well as business transactions between artists, authors, composers, performers, publishers, producers, broadcasters, and distributors. All of these entities rely on copyright protection and IP protection, which really brings me to the focus of today's panel. Again, it's great to work with Teamworks to convene such an esteemed panel of experts. They will share their perspectives on the importance of copyright protection, ways to leverage your rights, and also in discuss emerging trends that everyone involved in creative industries should know. So let me turn it over to Ananth Padmanabhan, and we'll begin the panel. Thank you again, and look forward to working with all of you as we work together to support an IP system that has certain predictable and reliable results. Thank you again, and thanks to JLF.
Thank you so much, John. Thank you. I'm audible? Yes. Thank you, John. Thank you for setting that context. I think at the heart of what we're going to talk about is the ability for a creator, whether it's a written word or music or any form of artistic expression, to hold the copyright for it, to be able to find a publisher or a creative expression to publish your work, monetize it, and then earn royalties without the fear of piracy. And if indeed there is piracy, to have a simple legal recourse to be able to protect your copyright. That is the fundamental to everything that we talked about. So the panel has discussed this morning. We'll try and keep it as limited to jargon-free as possible. But many things have happened very quickly. We publish books, we produce music, people who want them buy them. We hope that if it is pirated, we're able to find a solution to stop it. But what happened, the advent of the explosion of internet, social media, and the creator economy meant that there is an unlimited way in which anybody can publish, produce what they want. You can write a Substack article, you can start a YouTube page, you can do a podcast, you can self-publish your book. And then came Instagram, which means that people have this incessant need to put out content, and people have a need to consume that content. And that meant the borders of what was copyright, what was using own content and somebody else's content, what was sharing a book and an article, and if you were doing it regularly, I would call you a well-read human being in the past. Now those people have become influencers. So the lines have completely blurred between what is original authored content. And by no means am I denying the fact that there is incredible creativity on Instagram and TikTok and YouTube and podcasts. But the copyright of those who have originated that content has to be protected. So the panel here is a mix of government and somebody who's done a lot of work on IP protection, somebody who knows the music industry backwards front, as they say, a publisher for many years, published copyrightable content, and a very senior lawyer who helps. So we'll try and answer the questions about what it means to publish, to protect your copyright, and where recourse you can find. We will try and keep in about 5 questions at the end. But I want to start with Urvashi to talk about what copyright protection means now as a publisher.
Hi, can you hear me? Yeah? Okay. Thank you. Thanks, Ananth, for laying everything out so nicely. So I'm not going to repeat what you've said about how complex the whole thing has become with the explosion of the internet. I'll speak as a publisher of books. And for us, basically, the whole question of copyright and within quotes, piracy, because it comes to mean very different things now, has become very, very complicated and complex now, because we are looking at the rights of authors who produce a creative work, and we are looking at the rights of publishers who publish that work and put it out into the market. So we are looking at 2 sets of economies where both sets of people earn money from this, and the speed with which that material enters the free market, and I don't mean free market in the traditional sense of the term, but I'll give you an example that recently a very well-known feminist academic and activist called Gail Omwet passed away, and the next day on a list of feminist activists that I'm part of, which has thousands of women on it, her entire corpus of works appeared in PDF form, taken from every publisher, including our own publishing house, but also Sage, also Taylor and Francis and everything. And there was, apart from 1 or 2 voices, universal joy at Gail's important body of work being made available. So for me as a publisher, the most important thing and the most difficult thing to deal with is, while we recognize the rights of our authors, what we also find is that the very same authors are not averse to freely acquiring work by other writers, while they may be upset at their own work entering the free market. So that's one issue. How do we deal with this? And somehow the acquisition of those works for free, which are easily available on Google despite many takedown notices, seems to occupy a moral high ground, which is not exactly wrong, because it works on the assumption that knowledge should be free and freely available. So how do you actually deal with that? And that was very much in evidence in the case that some big publishers brought against a photocopier in Delhi University for photocopying content from their books. And the photocopier emerged as the hero, even though he was making money hand over fist, and the publishers were not. But I don't think, there is also behind that a model of publishing which overprices academic work and puts it so highly priced in the market that it's not easily available to students. So it makes it easier for students to occupy that moral high ground. So that is one aspect of the whole thing. The other aspect is when you publish digitally and you try to protect your works by, say, for example, putting DRMs on ebooks, but every young student knows how to get around the DRM. And so we have tried an experiment of not locking our books and saying we trust our readers, let's see what happens. And the truth is we haven't lost much, or we don't know how much we've lost, because the sales of ebooks just stay steady. Maybe you sell 2 books more or 2 books less, but it doesn't really matter. The third aspect of this is educational institutions, which now have reading lists of prescribed texts, which could be essays and things from different places. And no matter how wealthy those educational institutions may be, they will simply photocopy all this material and make it available for their students, thereby destroying the political economy. And a last thing that I want to mention, I just want to lay out the complications for you and the dilemma it places us in as publishers, and the earnings that we lose, but also the sense of being a little bit confused, at least I am, about where our priorities lie. And so the last thing that I want to put before you is that in our country, this old idea of knowledge being somehow collective and not necessarily individual. So individual knowledge makes it easier to trace who owns that, but the collective makes it much more difficult. And my example, Mr. Raghavender will be very upset with me, but I don't mean to target you, is that we created the logo of our publishing house based on a set of sculptures made in Chhattisgarh, Orissa, and the eastern part of India by a tribal group of people. Nobody owned the design. We went to them and said, how do we do it? And they said, we don't care about the copyright, just buy lots of these sculptures from us. So we bought a lot of them. We adapted the design. We created it. We did not trademark it because we don't have the money to go ahead and do that. And then the Ministry of Urban Affairs stole it and put it on a whole lot of buildings. They didn't steal it knowingly. They must have handed it to some unscrupulous designer who found a nice logo on the net, stole it. And actually, the laws don't protect us very well. And it is on various buildings. So what do we do in that? You know, so how do you deal with the complicated issues of copyright? I don't know, but I think one of the things we have to do is not legislate more and more, or not necessarily make coercive legislation more and more, but to work to educate our readers and our publishers and to create empathy.
Thank you for that. I think the point that knowledge is collective but also free, that's a very big assumption that's hurting all of us. But I think one of the things that we don't have in India, and one of Blaise was talking about it earlier, is that we don't know our entire consumption base. We don't know who's taking down what, or who's consuming what, who is buying what. Because one of the things that happens to books as them being tax-free is that you don't know the literal last mile of purchase, or who bought it, who sold it, where is it free, and stuff like that. But I think in the music industry, and you've spent 3 decades, it could be even worse. I was imagining looking at Instagram Reels, and if you switch off the audio, they're just people dancing. And then they just wildly pick anybody's music, and the most important, yesterday's music, add it to their stories, as it were, and they become the adapters, and therefore the representatives of that mood. So you go to Goa, you put a beach, and you add a Gehreya song. You didn't make the song. You were just traveling in Goa for 3 hours, and suddenly you become this travel influencer and monetize your proportion. I don't know what it means to the music industry, but I can imagine that it's fraught with piracy. And there is regulation, there is taxation, but how do you fight it, and what does it mean for people who might create music or actually might be using music they're not supposed to?
Ananth, I'll just kind of sidestep you for a minute. You know, I've heard the word creative sector, creative economy, monetization. But I think as a creative sector in India, we do not have a value for what our economic contribution is. Okay? And I think for us to be taken seriously, and this is, I'm not putting the blame at any government's doorstep, because governments have come and gone. We need a study, and the globally accepted study is the WIPO study, which is a Geneva-based institution which recognizes and has the, I would say it's UN General Assembly for copyright. And I think the creative sector should kind of come together and press for this study, because until and unless we know what our economic value is, we will never be able to kind of make a noise in Delhi. Sure. Today, the steel industry knows what their economic contribution, the GDP is, etc. Second is, I'll try and simplify it. A doctor will know what the prescription for the patient is if they only kind of know how serious the illness is. Okay, yeah. And the WIPO study will actually tell you the levels of piracy. I can tell you one thing in the music industry, we do our own study, and it's about 45 to 50% of piracy. And that is like piracy in terms of illegal downloads. There's also a white-collar piracy where, you know, the liability is not on the platform because the users uploaded it. Okay, I will come to that later when we kind of get into the whole section of this thing. So I think the first part is all nice, soft power, but what is the economic contribution? Till we don't get that, we will never be able to be taken seriously. The second issue is, and I think, the Delhi University textbook case is in front of everybody, but there's also an economic value that investors put in. And therefore, it has to be we have to allow free market economics to kind of decide. And also keep in mind that, it's also a public good. So there has to be a fine balance, because if everything becomes a public good, then there will be very few investors coming to kind of create more content, because there's no incentive for anybody to kind of drive it. That's the second point. The third point is technology. Technology has moved. I mean, everybody looks at the internet from an Orwellian point of view. I look at it from a Shakespearean point of view. The world is a stage, okay? And that's a great opportunity, and that is actually the democratization of content globally. You can kind of be sitting in any part of the world, and the song day and date can be heard in Brisbane, Bhopal, Bhubaneswar, and Boston, and Barcelona. But at the same time, that song can also be, or the content, let's kind of not stick to song, that song can also go viral, the song can also be illegally downloaded and passed on, and that needs to stop. And I think the onus has to be now on the platforms to ensure that take down means stay down. So when you as a publisher, or Urvashi as a publisher sends a notice, then that notice should be the final document for the platform, especially if it's an interactive platform, for them to make sure that anybody else uploads it, it doesn't get uploaded. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you for that. Safir, I'm going to come to you just one. Mr. Raghavender, I'm going to ask you this question then. There are two perspectives here. One, do we know the value of what is being created? So the publishing industry is an estimated $7 billion industry. It's bigger than Bollywood in India, employs more people than Bollywood in India, and clearly Bollywood has an entertainment value, but publishing has a change value. Books change lives. Does the government recognize and know exactly what the worth of the publishing industry is? Has it created segments within for us to be able to identify this is what authors create every year, this is the potential earning ability, this is the economic value of spends. Parents buy books, children buy books, we buy books for entertainment, and then what will we lose in terms of piracy? And if we are losing that amount of money in piracy, whether it's physical piracy or digital piracy, why isn't a recourse difficult? I'm sure you've done a lot on IP, and we always talk about it in forums. But why is piracy still so rampant? If it's 50 to 70% in music, in some of our bestsellers it's 100%. But on an average, we lose 25%. In a country which has potentially, I think 60 million people buy books properly, one book a year at least. And I believe that if we have 300 million children going to school, we can be the world's largest population buying books. And why can't we aim for 250 million people to legitimately buy books and add value to the entire chain? From a single sheet of paper to your bedside table, there is value to everybody involved. And why is it so difficult for us to protect that?
Thank you, Ananth. Yeah, Vande Mataram, good morning to all of you. It's very important question in this panel, copyright protection in the digital environment. And government was aware of the internet and online piracy. That is the reason why in 2012, Copyright Act was amended to make it in compliance with the WIPO, the World Intellectual Property Organization Internet Treaties, WIPO Copyright Treaty and WIPO Performers and Phonograms Treaty. So extending the copyright protection of the published books and also published music and films so that they are protected equivalently the way they were protected in the physical environment, in digital environment as well. So Urvashi ji was talking about the encrypted devices, technological protection measures, those protections, anyone hacking them and downloading illegally, and also changing the copyright information without permission, and the books are not available to be sold in a new form, in a plagiarized form, that is also not allowed. Coming to the basic issues of piracy in the online environment. Starts with the author's rights and the piracy. You all know that copyright is protects original expression, and the moment author writes, he wants his book to be printed, circulated, distributed, sold. So he approaches a publisher and signs an agreement. So same assignment agreement, the way it continued in physical environment and continues in the digital environment. But here, digitization helps you to come out with the e-books and other forms of the books. If you see the last week, one video was viral. I think his author's name is Vinod Shukla. He's a Hindi author. He is mentioning about his books without his permission, new editions have come out and reprinted, and he doesn't know how many copies have been sold. And if I'm correct, he was also alleging that new forms, new digital forms also books are being published. So basic thing I say that you go back to the contract agreement. Has he given these rights? What is the entire life of the author plus 60 years? He has given all the rights, adaptation and translation he has given that need to be seen. And another important is 2012 amendment we have clearly said, no new technology which is not in the commercial use, publisher can print and sell it unless and until that is clearly written in the agreement.
Sure.
Yeah. So that's why I said the agreement has to be seen to find out that. And many authors say that we are not getting royalties, the way Mr. Shukla said. But publishers always say that, we have been giving royalties. How many copies have been sold as per that agreement, that has to be provided. But any dispute arises, earlier they used to go to the Copyright Board, later IPAB, Intellectual Property Appellate Board. Recently, with the Tribunal Reforms Bill, all the powers of these adjudicatory bodies have been given to the respective commercial benches of the 25 high courts. For example, authors from New Delhi or publishers from New Delhi, this kind of problem come, they go to the commercial bench of Delhi High Court to resolve the issue. But here, without going to the court, how you can address?
Sure. No,
that is the technology, blockchain technology is there. Because the Right to Information Act, anyone is aggrieved party, files a RTA application, get information from the government. Because it is not a public authority. So what you can do that introduce a blockchain methodology where each individual is recognized and with a hashtag and a time stamped data, because a blockchain is immutable, it is transparent, they can have an intra in a portal only he can log in, author can log in and see, no one can see. Sure. And only his sale of his books, number of books printed he can see. And that transparency can be provided. This will answer in this digital world. Next important is many authors, publishers ask me, including the academic people, how about the exhaustion? Exhaustion, once the book is sold, the right of the author or publisher and distribute the same book is gone. What happens in the digital environment? Many libraries say that I get a copy, when she was mentioning about the breaking up these devices, locks, and making copy and giving to the student. So, for educational purposes in Delhi High Court, in Delhi photocopy case, they clearly said that distributing among the student for educational research purposes is okay, but not for the commercial purposes. So that is the legislative intention mentioned there. So, what happens? But I'm not for the education purposes. As a private individual, I'm buying an e-book and then sending the peer-to-peer sharing I'm doing and uploading everywhere. How to stop that? I said that your right has gone. So publisher community says no, the exhaustion principle.
So there is clear lacuna. I'm going to bring
again the technology helps here, blockchain technology.
No, not all. The ideal situation is that it is crystal clear and not everybody can afford the blockchain technology or go to that level. But I'm going to bring the lawyer in the room in. I mean, you've heard all of us talk about it. I'm going to ask a very simple question. Is that if I write a book and it's pirated, can I come to you?
Well, I'll invite you no matter what you do. So, of course, I'll invite you if somebody is copied. I wanted to give you a perspective on this more from my heart rather than as a practitioner, because a lot of you may not be so attuned to the law, but will look at it from a more practical perspective. let's take an example that you've done something, or maybe one of your sons or daughters or some family member has done some work that you believe you're very proud of. And I just come and rip it off. There's such a dichotomy in terms of your thought process that when I do it to you, you think it's wrong. But when you want to do it to somebody else, you want to make it a right. That's the first part. The second part is, if you look at some of the social media and sort of sites and where you do the sharing of files and other things, if you don't think it's of value, then why are you sharing it? So implicit is that you admit that there is value in it, and you know that value is not yours. You're basically trying to intrude into somebody else's value system. The third is that if you continue this activity, you're actually going to cause a disruption of content. Nobody, if you have the best, I always say this, that you are privileged to be able to buy a book at a 400, 300 rupee kind of price. You don't get education at that price. You spend more on, a local chart that you will eat rather than the sort of wisdom that will remain ingrained into you, or a great song or something else. So you're destroying the ecosystem. The result of the destruction of the ecosystem is that you're destroying the nation. You're taking away the ability to tax. You're encouraging the non-taxing economy. You're taking away economic growth. Also, from a basic norm of economics, there's something called economies of scale. So if the author discovers that, I only had a very few sales and he's so disappointed, he's not going to write the next point for you. He'll end up becoming a researcher in a top university, leave India, and then you'll come and say, I went to Stern and INSEAD and I got, this particular professor taught me, etc. And that's the end of the world, which is not good. It's like a brain drain. We're encouraging the brain drain even more. The next point I wanted to make is I'll give an example. So apart from my role as a lawyer and a strategist, I'm also considered to be one of India's good investors. This is an Instagram handle which is running right now, and it's called, instead of saying Safir Anand, he's Saflr Anand, and he's copied not only me, he's copied some of the other influencers who are in the field of finance. What is he doing? He's taking every single picture that I put up. He's taken every video that I'm putting up. So you will say, how is he violating? How is he troubling you? The point is, he's going on chats and he's giving advice that may be contrary to the interest of all the subscribers. He's amassed 15,000 followers in just one day by using my name. Now, what he's doing on the private domain may be very damaging. So what happens in piracy is that you may have a lot of damage coming in actually, rather than the advantage of the benefit of what it was. And the last part I wanted to make is that in order to find a solution, we have to look at a balance. The balance will come partly from law and partly from technology. Now, just as the music industry, as an example, has suffered from the piracy, and the statistics are alarming, let's also remember that when we channelize it well, sites like iTunes make the song available to you at just 10 rupees or 8 rupees or 15 rupees, which is not such an exorbitant price to pay for all the encouragement and the applauding that you're going to give to the industry to grow. And when you have transformed this, what happens is, say, for example, we have a company called Saregama, we have a company called Tips. I'm talking about Indian example, and this will apply anywhere in the world. Their survival is only based upon this. So if you're going to destroy them and you'll say, oh, go away, they'll also take their content away, and that's the end of the world for you. You take away all the original content from Netflix, you'll have nothing to watch. You can go to YouTube and you'll keep searching for piracy, but piracy of what? Because the original has gone away. So therefore, it is very, very important that we encourage the sort of movement that is there, and at the same time balance it in a way that, because I'm telling you, the pricing is going to be very cheap. If you do not do piracy and he has 40% of market share back, be rest assured that the prices of books will become way more affordable and the businesses will be way more encouraged to sort of take this on.
Exactly, and I'm not going into, there's another aspect of the cost of creation in India. The cost of legitimate creation in India is not supported for a country of our size and our levels of creativity across all language and formats of creativity. It is quite expensive to make a book. It's quite expensive to make a piece of music that can legitimately reach millions of potential consumers. And the cost of it is the least. Like he's saying, and what value do you attach to a book or a piece of music and what you pay for it? So there is a certain cultural responsibility that we have to take. I was in a management course where the professor in a top-tier school gave me photocopied pages from the books that we have published. And when I walked up to him and said, this is not on. I mean, you've just made the author lose 85 copy royalty sales. He said, but I bought the first copy. So there is a big misunderstanding of what it means to use somebody else's content and dole it out free, digitally, physically, or otherwise. But I think you've heard all of our perspectives. Copyright protection is important. The fact that we know what turf we are living in, what turf we need to protect, how do you legislate and logically monetize it and ensure that the creator receives his royalty and the producers, both publisher and or music producers, are profitable so that they can create more. It's not about being profitable on paper for this moment of time. I will ask just if there's one lines that each of you can kind of conclude to say for the audience on what is the most pressing at the moment, or a solution, or what they should be thinking about, and then I'll take questions if there are any too for the panel. Just one quick line.
In terms of digital technology, take down means stay down. In terms of addressing the piracy issue, it's like a cancer. You need chemotherapy, which is the rules and regulations and laws, and also palliative care, empathy, as Urvashi said. So at the end of the day, educate the consumer that when you're downloading something, please understand there's also malware coming with it. It's not only about you kicking somebody in the stomach, but also somebody out there is putting malware, mining your data, your credit card data, etc. So I think education. Thank you.
Thank you, Blaise. Urvashi.
Copyright is a right given by the legislation to the creators and publishers. So respect that copyright. Because the moment you photocopy or share an internet, because online piracy has become a big problem. So imagine somebody taking your property, physical property, and using it. Similarly, you can't use without permission, without citation, the work created by the creators. So respect the copyright and bring the awareness of respect of copyright to your all the friends and relatives, that don't buy pirated works, and because whatever available on the internet is not in the public domain, and most of the works available are pirated works. Public domain means the copyright out of copy. They are not out of copyright works. Thank you.
Thank you. Do not Google. The first sentence should not be free. That's all. Just eradicate the idea of free if you're looking for something that is meant to add value to your life.
Well, I'm always stuck when people say one line or one book or something. So I just say, well, let's think about it together, because if you're confused and there are difficult issues, it's not easy for us either. So let's talk about it together, because we're all in the business of producing, sharing, disseminating knowledge.
Thank you.
I think one sort of misconception that I wanted to remove is that a lot of people think intellectual property is the possession of the rich. It's actually the journey for you to, from a small company, to become rich, and that's a lot of people do not understand it. And the one take-home point I want to indicate is that I do not know, and it's an open challenge to you. Please name a startup in India that has succeeded without the benefit of intellectual property. It's not going to happen. If you're so proud about the fact that we are making unicorns, whether in India, the same unicorns will be interacting with the international world. The only edge that they will have is if they have intellectual property. No VCs ever funds a business model that doesn't have an intellectual property.
Thank you. Are there questions? So what we'll do with an eye on time is we'll take 3 questions. Please, can you introduce you by first name and then ask the question for who in the panel? And then we'll go from there. Gentleman here, and then Remo, and then the lady here.
Hello, this is Srinivas from Pune. I'm covering it for Delhi Prabhat. My very simple question is that whenever any case comes to court about copyright violation, is it not required to consider it as a part of fast-track courts? Because more delay in the decision, the more delay in the verdict is the loss of either a publisher or a writer.
Good question. So why aren't anti-piracy cases fast-track cases?
Yes,
and respecting?
yes.
Remo, do you have a question? Can you pass on the mic, sir?
Can I ask?
Yes, please.
No, sorry.
Just right behind you.
Okay, I was here.
Hi, my name is Remo. I'm from Goa. I'm a musician, basically, now also turned, I've written a book. All my life, I feel I've been exploited by music companies who have only paid me a so-called advance on royalty. But then once the album was released, there was never any further payment made whatsoever. Now I've joined the publishing business, or I've written a book, and I feel very confident that the publishing world is not like the music industry, and that I will see the royalties coming. But at the risk of being mugged on the way out by record companies and publishers, I want to ask a question which is not really related to copyrights, but to royalties to us musicians. I know that publishers and I know that record companies spend a lot of money in promoting our work. But without us, the musicians, and without us, the writers, if I may include myself in that hallowed group, there would be nothing to sell. You would have nothing to sell. You would have nothing to discuss about over here. So I feel personally that the royalties should be 50% for the author and 50% for the people selling it. However much you may be spending, to promote our work, we have spent years and years and years creating it.
The music.
And blood, sweat, and tears creating it.
Okay.
So I feel that there should be more equality in the royalties.
Sure.
I may be wrong, but if I'm wrong, please correct me.
No, but happy to let somebody answer the question. There's one for Mr. I just take one more question. Yes, in the front row, the lady here, and then Mrs. Chanda, the girl here. Yes, please.
Hi, I'm Bhagyashree.
Hi.
And we're talking about intellectual property rights and copyrights in terms of publishing sectors and industries which have already been established. So what happens to small writers like me who have blogs, who want to share, who want to put out content? But if our copyrights are violated, who should we turn to? Because we neither have the money nor the power to take down big companies who might take a liking to our content and then produce it and stamp it as their own. So who should we turn to?
Very good question. Do you want the first question, which was fast track courts for anti-money?
Coming to your question on fast track courts for copyright infringement cases, government has introduced a new law in 2015. That law is Commercial Court Act. So this was introduced to reduce the delay in giving a solution to the commercial dispute. In the Act clearly says intellectual property disputes are all commercial dispute, both industrial property and copyright. The beauty of the commercial court, which we have set up in Delhi, dedicated courts for ease of doing business assessment by the World Bank, 22 dedicated courts in Delhi and 6 in Mumbai, 9 in Bangalore, 4. They do fast track mechanism. There is a pre-institution mediation settlement files. You can go to the trial. All time-bound arguments have to be taken place there. Even summary judgment is also possible there. That is more fast track. So there is no for fast track. Fast track were basically POSCO cases and crime against women, and also the criminal cases against the MLAs and MPs. Coming to Rimoji, I'm a great fan of yours. I'm happy to answer your question. You are a singer. You are a composer as well. So you have to see what kind of contracts you have signed while distributing your songs or communicating you to the public with the music companies. Please have it vetted through an advocate, first one. Next advice is the kind of royalties has to flow to you. 2012 amendment clearly says the international business model of 50% sharing with the music companies, with the creators. Creators include authors and music composers. The first time in the world, India brought the business model in the law. That was allowed by the Rome Convention provisos. So there is a society, copyright society called Indian Performing Rights Society, IPRS. If you are a member, it's okay. If you are not a member, you can take the membership there for your management of your royalties. As a singer, again, 2012 amendment facilitated creation of performers' rights societies. The Singers' Rights Society have been created. Indian Singers Rights Association, ISRA. So you can take a membership that and manage. So that will address most of the issues, and you can take the legal advice also, how to manage your rights. Coming to the last question of copyright in the blogs, most of the people are very fond of writing blogs. So they have to protect the content written there. If you are individual blog, only you are writing and it is allowed for other public to read, no, you have to have a, copyright is automatic. The moment you are express your original thoughts there, it is a copyright protected immediately. All the rights flow to you, bundle of economic rights and moral rights. But if somebody is copying it, so all the, the definition of infringement given in section 51 applicable to you, because copying has been done without permission, without taking license from you, that is the one. Then comes, if you are allowing me, he, she, everyone to write on your blog. But we people, very fond of writing something on some blog. So we register, we get a login and password, and we don't read the contract agreement, drop down box, because so many provisions are there. Oh, come on, agree, click and pass on. Then we have sold all the rights. So you write 5 pages their blog, the most original content. Obviously, unknowingly you have transferred your rights to the that blog owner. That's what many authors do that. They publish their articles in international journals. Many professors come to me, sir, I have written an article. That journal is not allowing me to take a copy and give it to my friends. I tell her, boss, you have signed an agreement, transferred all the rights to him. They are allowing you to only read only, because I have written an article for Journal of Intellectual Property Practice of Oxford University. My articles published there, and famous Coppinger and Bohr, James copyright book published my chapter on Indian moral rights. No, I can't take a copy and start giving to everyone, because I have transferred my rights to them.
Well, thank you, sir. I think we are just only out of time. We are completely out of time. Otherwise, we'll be asked to split. But
last question.
May I suggest that the conversation extend beyond the stage, because I've just been told the next session is going to be scheduled. One question?
I just wanted to make 3 very quick points that will address most of you. First of all, that when you go to court and you succeed, your court fees is refunded, which is a very big plus for you to go to court, because that means your expenses are out of the system. It's not a more legal lawyer fee, but at least you. Second is, there are a lot of cases of damages. I think many people don't know about this. The damages don't come from the act. They're also exemplary damages. And the third part is these out of court or this pre-litigation mediation that really happens. So if that happens, you don't go to court only. So you've got a relief instantly, and it's binding. So there are a lot of solutions to this. Also, just, out of total respect to Mr. Remo and thing, dekho, ye jalwa can also be the other side. It can also be the fact that you can be jubilant about the fact that you've got it. Just have to be, the negotiation between you and somebody else has to be substantive on a certain thing. If the contract has been signed which is against you and you have sort of low royalty rates, then you're obviously subject to that. So it's more about negotiating.
One question. Yeah. Actually, I'm Dr. G.C. Bagri from Delhi. Urvashi ji is very senior publisher, but I'm very much surprised about her innocence. Whatever unethical practice he was talking about, they were 20, 25 years ago. What is happening today? Please talk about that. I can name thousands of books. Those you can download from BJP library website. Talk about the libraries where you can download millions of books. Talk about the websites, those who are giving you PDF for everything. So things are changed. Those were minor things, photocopier and all that. Now things are going
so
away.
What's the question?
Yeah.
What's the question?
Question is, tell us about the latest trends about unethical practice.
So the latest trend is, okay, you want to take it? Okay. So the day the law is amended where take down means stay down. So the moment I upload a copy which is illegitimate and it gets downloaded and it gets dropped down, that's the way it'll be a happy situation for Remo. Without the performer, without the lyricist, without the author, we are nobody. So rest assured, you won't be mugged. But as I said, probably you can have this conversation offline. But the singer, the composer, the lyricist, the publisher, the author is very important for our survival. So rest assured, you won't be bummed.
Yeah, I just wanted to add very...
Sorry. I'm going to say something that's not going to be very popular. Thank you for saying I'm innocent. I take it as a compliment. After 50 years in the industry, if I can still be innocent, that's wonderful. I just want to say something that's not going to be very popular in response to the question that Remo posed, and I think it's in all your minds. I think advances in publishing are a curse. They should be banned. Which other industry pays you in advance for work that they don't know will sell or not sell? So give us some credit for that. Don't say you want more advances. And the second thing is, I just want to put this figure before you because many people don't know it. It costs me 20 rupees to print a book. I will price that book at 100 rupees. Now all of you will be thinking, she's got 80 rupees, huge profit. 62 rupees of that will go to the distributor. So a 100 rupee book, I will get 38 rupees. Out of that, 20 rupees is my print cost. 10 rupees is my royalty. What is left is my gross profit before tax. The industry works on a 6-month credit period. I get my money in dribs and drabs. You should congratulate us for surviving on this industry that earns no money, rather than asking for 50% royalties. I'm sorry, but that's ridiculous.
I'm sure this conversation will extend beyond the stage, but I just want to thank my colleagues on the panel and for JLF for actually scheduling such an important topic. I also want to thank the US State Department, which actually facilitated that, and Sanjoy is also.
I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank everybody, and these are discussions which are vital, because not only do they create an understanding between those who create the content, but also those who are able to use the content to get it out to market and make sure that it becomes a product. Until and unless there's a meeting of mind between these two, the misunderstanding will always be leveraged by others who then benefit invariably. So we will be doing many more of these discussions, and thank you, Ananth, for staying back to moderate this specifically, and of course, thank you to the US State Department for supporting this session. Thank you all.